Imagine you've broken your arm. Today, you'd go to a hospital, get an x-ray, a cast, and maybe some pain relief. Now, picture the same scenario, but 1,000 years ago. Instead of a doctor, you get a barber with a rusty saw. Instead of pain relief, you get a prayer and maybe a leech or two. Sounds fun, right? Well, welcome to the Middle Ages, a time when medicine was a terrifying blend of guesswork, superstition, and downright dangerous practices. For the next 10 minutes, we're going to travel back to this world of bloodletting, bad smells, and bizarre beliefs. We'll find out why it really sucked to be a medieval doctor, uncover the secrets behind the iconic plague doctor mask, investigate a mysterious plague that made people dance until they dropped, and see how the rich got a very different, though not necessarily better kind of care. So grab your smelling salts, because things are about to get grim. Let's start with the daily life of a medieval doctor. First off, most doctors weren't what we'd call qualified. Many were monks who studied ancient Greek and Roman texts, believing that the key to health was balancing the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Got a fever? You probably had too much blood. The cure? Bloodletting?
Yes.
This could be done by making a small cut or by applying leeches to suck the blood out. If you had a headache, they might drill a hole in your skull, a procedure called trepanation, to release evil spirits. And your local barber? He wasn't just for trims. Barbers were also surgeons, pulling teeth, setting bones, and performing amputations with the same tools they used for haircuts. Anesthesia wasn't a thing, so you'd be wide awake, maybe with a shot of strong alcohol if you were lucky. The concept of germs was centuries away, so tools were rarely cleaned, and infection was often a bigger killer than the original problem. They also relied heavily on astrology, believing that the alignment of the planets influenced health. A doctor might consult a star chart before deciding on the best day to bleed you. And what about medication? Forget pharmacies. Medieval doctors used herbs, spices, sometimes truly bizarre ingredients like crushed gemstones, animal dung, or even mummy powder. It was a world where prayer was considered as potent as a poultice, and a doctor's success was often measured not by how many patients they saved, but by how convincingly they could explain away their failures as God's will. It was a thankless, messy, and often fatal profession for both the doctor and the patient. Now, let's talk about the most iconic figure of medieval medical horror, the plague doctor. When you picture one, you probably see that long, bird-like beak mask, the wide-brimmed hat, and the long, dark coat. This image is terrifying, and for good reason. It's a symbol of one of the deadliest pandemics in human history, the Black Death. This plague swept through Europe in the mid-14th century, wiping out an estimated 1/3 to 1/2 of the entire population. In the face of such overwhelming devastation, communities hired special plague doctors to treat the sick. The problem was, no one understood what caused the plague. The prevailing theory was miasma, or bad air. They believed the disease spread through poisonous, foul-smelling vapors. This is where the famous costume comes in. The beak of the mask was stuffed with aromatic herbs, flowers, and spices like mint, cloves, and camphor. The idea was that this would filter out the deadly miasma and protect the doctor. The long waxed canvas coat was meant to prevent the bad air from touching their skin. The wide-brimmed hat was simply part of the professional attire of the time. The wooden cane was used to examine patients without actually touching them, and sometimes to poke them to see if they were still alive. Unfortunately, none of this worked. The plague was actually caused by the bacteria Yersinia pestis, spread by fleas on rats. The costume offered no real protection. Plague doctors had a shockingly low survival rate, and their treatments were just as ineffective as their outfits. They would lance the buboes, the painful swellings, and apply poultices, but these measures were useless. They were essentially walking symbols of hopelessness. Figures in a terrifying costume fighting an invisible enemy they couldn't possibly understand or defeat. But the Black Death wasn't the only bizarre medical mystery of the Middle Ages. Imagine. It's the summer of 1518 in the city of Strasbourg. A woman named Frau Trophia walks out into the street and just starts dancing. There's no music, no festival, just her, dancing silently and intensely. She doesn't stop. Not for a day. Not for a week. Within a month, over 400 people had joined her. This was the dancing plague of 1518. The city authorities were baffled. At first they thought the cure was ... more dancing, actually cleared open spaces, built a stage, and hired musicians, hoping the dancers would simply tire themselves out. This only made it worse. The non-stop exertion in the summer heat was deadly. People began collapsing from heart attacks, strokes, and pure exhaustion. They literally danced themselves to death. So what on earth was going on? This wasn't the only instance. Similar dancing manias were reported across Europe for centuries. Modern historians have a few theories. One is mass hysteria, or a mass psychogenic illness, where a psychological stress affecting one person spreads through a group. The people of Strasbourg were living through extreme famine, poverty, and disease. The stress could have manifested in this bizarre physical way. Another popular theory involves ergot, a fungus that can grow on damp rye, the main grain used for bread. Ergot poisoning can cause muscle spasms, convulsions, and hallucinations. It's possible that the entire community was accidentally tripping on tainted bread. We'll likely never know for sure what caused the dancing plague, but it remains a chilling reminder of how vulnerable people were, not just to diseases we understand, but to mysterious afflictions that defied all logic and medical knowledge of the time. Finally, let's look at how your social status determined your medical fate. If you were a king or a wealthy nobleman, you didn't go to the local barber surgeon. You had a personal physician, a university-educated man who could read Latin and quoted ancient Greek texts. But did this mean you got better care? Not necessarily. While the poor received rough and ready treatments, the rich received expensive and elaborate versions of the same flawed medicine. When he had a seizure, his team of elite physicians subjected him to a nightmare of treatments. They bled him of a pint of blood. They made him vomit and purged his bowels. They shaved his head and applied blistering agents to his scalp. They fed him potions made from human skulls. After days of this torture, the king, unsurprisingly, died. The treatments likely did more harm than the original illness. For the poor, healthcare was often communal or found in charitable hospitals run by the church. These places were more like hospices, offering food, shelter, and prayer rather than active medical treatment. They were often overcrowded and unsanitary, but they provided a basic level of care that was otherwise unavailable. The wealthy, on the other hand, were treated in the privacy of their own castles and manors. Their doctors would spend hours examining their urine, checking its color, smell, and even taste against elaborate charts to diagnose illness. They would create complex astrological charts to determine the best course of action. So while the poor might get a quick and brutal amputation from a barber, a rich person would get a slow, drawn-out, an equally ineffective treatment guided by the stars and ancient philosophy. In the end, wealth couldn't buy you a cure for ignorance. Whether you were a peasant or a king, falling ill in the Middle Ages was a roll of the dice, and the odds were never in your favor. From leech-happy doctors and beaked plague costumes to dancing epidemics and royal torture, the world of medieval medicine was a far cry from the science-based healing we rely on today. It was a world governed by fear, superstition, and a profound misunderstanding of the human body. Thinking about it really makes you appreciate your next trip to the doctor, doesn't it? It's a powerful reminder of how far we've come and how precious modern medical knowledge truly is. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this fascinating, horrifying, or a bit of both, please give this video a like and consider subscribing for more deep dives into the weirdest corners of history. We'll see you in the next one.
Stranded in the open, dried out tears of sorrow, lacking all emotion, staring down the barrel, waiting for
कमरे में घुसता जैसे हाथी, टेबल बैठा तो फिर गांधी, करते मोटा 4 शो का होते दंगे, चलती लाठी। हमने हार से सीखा और सीखों से जीत बना दी, सोना था हराम तभी तो किस्मत हो रही चांदी चांदी।